This is Your Next Tech Startup. I'm host Isabel Rasmussen, founder of Processo Talent. Today, we will be discussing two remote senior full-stack engineering roles with our guest, CEO and co-founder of Pandatron, Dima Syrotkin. So, Dima, please tell us a bit about yourself and what led you to choose the co-founder path.
Yeah, hello, honored to be here. So, a bit about myself. Not only a serial entrepreneur, but also serial immigrant, originally from Ukraine, but lived in Finland, Germany, US. I still a PhD student on paper, so worked a little bit in academia, although didn't finish it yet. So let's see. Being a founder doesn't really help with that. Worked in management consulting and started three companies. One which I sunsetted, one that I sold successfully, and this is the third one. And what really led me to become an entrepreneur was when I was 19, 20, I attended a bunch of personal development conferences, went through therapy, coaching, and it really impacted me deeply. I was like, why is this not more widely available? Like I was in the corporate world and feeling like it's not really seen as an investment, but more as an expense. And I saw this also opportunity while working in management consulting around corporate strategy was the thing where I can see that there is a clear problem in the market and huge demand. So that's a little bit about my story.
Let's dig into what Pandatron does. So, your vision is to develop leadership as a service, a software that supports leaders in managing their organizations and unlock organizational performance and business transformation through personal growth of individuals. So,
It's a
I'm
mouthful.
curious exactly how you do that.
Yeah, that's a mouthful. One way
And it sounds amazing, but I'm like, how does it happen?
yeah,
So explain it kind of like assume your listener
yeah.
knows nothing about software, AI, change management. Like, how do you explain what you're actually doing?
Yeah, one way I try to explain it lately is saying, imagine, I don't know, take a famous company. Many people have heard of Siemens. It's like 100,000 people, right? Even as the CEO of Siemens,
Mm-hmm.
you actually don't really feel, I would bet, much in control. You have like 100,000 people, and it's often like a game of broken telephone where you try to be like, hey guys, I think X is important. And then you can tell your vice presidents, but then like by
Mm-hmm.
the time it reaches everyone, it's going to take a lot of time and probably the message gets diluted and probably people don't understand it, so they're not going to actually act on it. And so the vision is like, can you see a bit of a dashboard where you can like see different departments and be like, okay, we want to push a bit of innovation here, or like here we actually think that like safety is really important, and let's nudge our people to actually implement initiatives on that front. And actually on the customer service front, let's try this new AI stuff and let's see if it helps with customer service. So that's a bit of the vision. And then how do you get there? Primarily, we have, I would say, two sides of the product right now. One is an AI, conversational AI agent, so essentially, a chatbot that talks to people, helps them to
Mm-hmm.
understand the company strategy, like because that's often the biggest
Mm-hmm.
challenge, like even knowing what is happening and why it's happening. Secondly, it helps them to understand how does it relate to them, helps them to set goals that are related to that strategy, and support them across the whole spectrum of soft skills. Because often it's not really like lack of knowledge, but it's things like knowing how to prioritize these things, or how to explain these things to your team and how to motivate them, or conflict resolution with a department that actually doesn't go along, or maybe the opposite, that they don't understand your perspective of why you think it's a bad idea. So that's one, right? That you can nudge everyone at scale and kind of support them. Where previously we only used trainings
Mm-hmm.
where you put 1,000 people in the same room and it's not personalized. And then the second part is analytics, where when we have hundreds and thousands of people talking to the bots. So currently, with like one client, Panasonic, there's like 3,000 sessions every month happening. Right. So if you were to hire human coaches,
Wow.
like that would take a lot more money and resources, but now you can actually do that. And so if you have like 3,000 sessions, and that's like a tiny percentage still of their population. But still, even with that, if you aggregate that data and then you look into what is actually happening there, it's anonymized, but you can still see patterns of the kind of what's happening in the collective.
Right.
So yeah, that was still a mouthful, but hopefully it's a little bit more clear.
Yeah. No, I think how AI is going to be used for things like that is really fascinating. And I love that example of 1,000 people in a room getting a message and how you can't personalize that versus taking this message and really personalizing and supporting the individual in a way that you can't do if you're fully relying on humans to do that. Okay, we're going to jump into hiring. So you're hiring for two roles, um, uh, both full stack engineers. And then one of those full stack engineers also owns DevOps. And then the other one owns security. What are the key problems that they're going to be working to solve over the next 3 to 6 months? What is going to make that work really interesting for those engineers?
Well, for those people who like starting things from scratch, I guess that would be very interesting. That's maybe an overstatement.
Mhm.
I wouldn't say it is really from scratch, but fairly recently we started going into these directions, right? Where we were like, okay, we do need way better DevOps practices than what we've had before. And so it's been a journey that has been started, but it was something that we were doing kind of on the side. And so now we realized, okay, yeah, we really need to lay that proper foundation there. And it's a similar story with security. So if you sell to Fortune 500s, one of the big questions is like, okay, are you SOC certified? Are you ISO certified? And so the goal would be to actually get certified. So that's something that we are, on the journey of getting there. And being a startup, we couldn't really afford to like have two people where like one is just a consultant and then the other one is executing it. We kind of wanted someone who has already been executing these things, not just saying, oh, like I can see a problem there, but also being able to go and fix it. And so that's why full stack plus security. And I guess similar story for DevOps. Both are like senior roles, so we expect people to be quite experienced. And also, I would mention that we do have a few people in the pipeline already. So like even if we end up hiring for this, do check the website. There might be other roles popping up because we kind of wanted to ramp up slowly. So we didn't want to hire 5 people at the same time, but sort of onboard people one by one, make it a bit more sustainable. Hope to open even more positions in the near future.
When you're thinking about the full stack plus DevOps role, what is that ideal candidate? I talked to a good amount of full stack engineers who've been in early stage startups who've done some of the DevOps work, but they haven't had a role where they've fully owned DevOps, or people who've moved really into owning all of DevOps, but they started their career as full stack. So those different personas are ones that I'm used to. What's the one that you're looking for?
Yeah, I think the goal here is really DevOps, right? So that's kind of the priority. But we do want them to have experience with our stack, which people can kind of go into the details, I guess, outside. Obviously, looking to get as close to perfection as possible, but generally we're looking at like if you hit like 80% of the requirements, then we're gonna talk and see if you can sort of grow into fulfilling the rest. Some things outside just skill set are. And by the way, that's just to mention, that's also a similar thing on security, right? Because security is the priority. I would say that's kind of like also what we're looking for primarily. And then the kind of the full stack is secondary, but still very important. And
So
um,
with that, would you say that their day-to-day
hmm,
work is like 70 to 80% of it going to be the
yep,
DevOps work, but like there's just full stack work to get done too. So when they can, they're lending a hand there. And the same with security,
yep.
or is it going to be more of a 50-50 split?
No, probably like more like 70, 80.
Okay.
And I think the full stack expertise also helps them to deal with those 70, 80. Because like I was alluding, right, with security, it's of course great if someone can like advise, okay, this is the good case practice, but it's like what we are ideally going for and what the ideal candidate can do is also go and execute on it. And that's kind of where the full stack expertise also comes handy. And then of course, I mean, English, and I'm mentioning that because we do hire remotely
Mhm.
and globally. So we
Right.
actually open to,
And normally remote, I'm used to remote meaning US
mm,
remote, but your remote actually, like when you say remote, what do you
yeah, I mean
mean?
globally, like any country on Earth, as long as you have like internet connection. And I don't know, there are some countries where we probably, because of like international politics, cannot send money, so that could be tricky. But otherwise, if it's not North Korea, then it's probably doable. Yeah, so and that's kind of a big perk.
That's
that
amazing.
we are kind of the limitation, of course, for like we hire, for example, a lot in Brazil. We have 2 people in Brazil right now that are
Hmm.
working for us, and then we have 2 that actually moved to Finland because that's our biggest. So they ended up moving there. We hire, for example, a lot there, but we did learn that we do need English that is actually fluent. So that's then I don't
Yeah.
know, unfortunate fortunate limitation, because we want the person to actually be integrated into the team. Like we're actually hiring someone full time to be with us long term and really grow with the company and hopefully become a team lead and whatnot down the road, or whatever their aspirations are. Yeah.
And I know most engineers are curious to know like what size the team
Hmm.
is. So how big is the engineering team right
Yeah, so
now?
it's 6 people if you include the CTO. It would be 7 if you also include the chief product officer. He's not technical per se. I mean, has some technical
Hmm.
background, but his role is more on the prioritizing the work. But he does work with the technical team a lot.
Hmm.
Currently, mostly, so I mentioned that we have a biggish office in Helsinki, so we have like 4 people from the engineering team there, and then 2 people in Brazil. But we have clients globally, and so we are also open to other time zones because, I mean, for example, we have a lot of clients in Japan. So, if we would have someone in Asia, like it could
Hmm.
also be a plus. Of course, like might be a bit
Hmm.
more tricky to work, considering that most of the people are kind of in that range from Eastern time to sort of Europe. But nonetheless, like that's why we are like hiring truly globally, because the clients are everywhere. No.
It's great that you guys have the flexibility. I also think that's a lot of candidates to filter through.
Well,
Um,
we're focusing, of course, on certain locations first. Yeah.
Lastly, let's talk about
Yeah.
culture. Obviously, culture is incredibly important to you. So, can you give me a specific example of your culture? Obviously, you highlighted different time zones. What is your culture and how you build that?
Yeah. So number one, I think we are, I mean, for example, if you look at like internationality and inclusiveness in that regard, we have like 20
Mhm.
nationalities. Of course, culture is more than
Wow.
just, nationalities, but that's one a number. 50% of the
Mhm.
tech team is women, and I think overall like
Wow.
45% of the company is women, I think, if I'm not mistaken. So quite diverse in terms of genders as well. Um,
Mhm.
I would also say, I mean, in terms of like specific examples, this may be like small, silly things, but like a lot of people do love coming to the office. We're kind of like now decorating, redecorating. And for example, we have like an
Mhm.
office calendar where every employee submits their like pet. And then every month there's like a different pet on the calendar. And then, every employee gets like an animal that represents them when their birthday is on the calendar. So it's like a small thing, but it's like represents, I guess, like little things. And people hang out just outside of work as well because many people make friends.
Mhm.
Of course, working hard as well, but I think that kind of goes without saying. So, and I think partly because people also have that friendship, they also kind of care to deliver for the team and feel like it's something important. Also, another small thing, I mean, because we are remote mostly, like hybrid, but like a lot of the work is remote,
Mhm.
where people are just like, oh, like thank you person
Yeah.
X for like doing this and this and helping me with that. I was surprised that it's like constantly active. Like, like sometimes you have initiatives and then they kind of just
Mhm.
die down, and this one has been going on for years, and it's super strong, and just like lives on its own. So this is some small things. And definitely try to accommodate people who are remote. Like one person recently just asked to like install Donut that like introduces you to like coffee chats with colleagues where you can like grab half an hour and sort of just have a casual kind of
Mhm.
chit chat, doing what we can, and trying to be creative with it as well.
That sounds great. With culture comes screening for culture. So, what is your favorite question to ask to see if someone is a culture fit, and what are you looking for in the answer?
Hmm. Yeah, I think what we are looking actually for is along the lines of like how have they worked with other people while delivering the sort of amazing projects that they delivered. And so we asked them, okay, well,
Mm.
what are your accomplishments, and then tell me like how did that happen. And then we're curious, like, okay, well, how did that like work actually unfold step by step? And was there a lot of communication involved? Was that just like an individual contribution where the person like did everything end to end? And everything like has its place, but in a way, I think that we are prioritizing more people being able to sort of work with others and sort of
Mhm.
accept their limitations, ask for help, and work with others productively and effectively. So yeah, that's what we are looking for, and that's what we ask.
You're asking the question not as a culture
Hmm.
question, but you're filtering it as a culture question.
Well,
And so if the person's answer is a project where like they really worked by themselves and owned everything, is that the wrong
that's
answer?
okay too. We try to look at it across the whole interview, not just, of course, like one question. That's just one example.
Mhm.
But I think it could be an issue if they don't have experience working in a team, for example. And there have been cases, unfortunately,
Okay.
where we're like a little bit skeptical because of this thing, and maybe we would like prioritize someone else who actually, has that experience. Because, so far, just like in our experience, most of the work hasn't been done in isolation. So there's sort of a lot of
Yeah.
collaboration involved, even and especially how do you communicate outside the tech team with sort of other stakeholders. And we're
Mhm.
constantly learning, by no means perfect. That's especially interesting because if you don't have experience there, then I think it can be tough because often, of course, like the sales team, they know what the customer wants and what the ideal situation is. And then you on the tech side understand how long something would take to deliver. And then you sort of need to marry the two somewhere in the middle where it actually makes sense for all the parties involved.
Mhm.
And so understanding that, I think, has been critical.
Listening to how they talk about other
Yeah,
people and also listening for if they just don't ever talk about
yeah,
people.
exactly. Yeah.
And I found those two things, and it's hard because I've been in toxic work environments where it's hard to talk
Mm,
about that
mm,
environment and not sound
absolutely.
negative. But when I've given people that like understanding and empathy, it has sometimes backfired. So yeah, I do always recommend when you're interviewing, you really do have to like be able to stay focused on positive experiences and positive interactions with others because it really does come out as a red flag if
Yeah, yeah. And it's exactly like you said. Yeah. Essentially listening to how they talk about those experiences and those interactions.
yeah. Okay. Well, if someone is interested in one of your roles and meets 100% of the requirements, or at least let's say 90, then what is the best way for them to connect with you and your team?
80% plus is good enough. So
Okay.
pandatron.ai is the website, and then you can press careers and you will see all our open positions there. Currently, we have two positions opened on the technical side, both quite senior. Yeah, but we'll hopefully be opening up more. So
Thank you so much for joining us today.
thanks.